10 years into the 21st century, the world is more interconnected than ever. Yet it also represents an unprecedented time of fragmentation. This is evidenced by the global financial meltdown, the tearing down of the middle class, the growing presence of fundamentalism, and the commodification of terrorism. Where do we go from here? And how can we redirect this path towards social justice? History has confirmed that education is a key component to a more balanced and peaceful society. One scholar who has developed theories for this purpose is Dr. Carlos Alberto Torres. His research agenda has resulted in the production of theories designed to decipher the mechanics of society and build upon answers. Who is Carlos Torres as a man, and what is his intellectual evolution?
I don't think it is very common that intellectuals grow up in places where political instability is the trademark, or that, if I recall my own education in secondary school, I studied under two dictatorships. Religion, science and politics articulated a great deal of my own analysis during the 70s and 80s. And in terms of science was this discovery of Marxism or neo-Marxism, and how that allowed me to prevent in me recurrence towards a nationalistic thinking. It was very much in vogue at the time in Latin America, and particularly in Argentina with the phenomena of Peronism. I was shocked, I was very naive. Who will know what was going to happen in a country like Argentina? We have already endured dictatorships. This was going to be a systematic annihilation of the population, and particularly of the opposition. When I finished my first book in 1975-76, I took the book to the publisher, who was the publisher of Paulo Freire, Julio Barreiro, who was a friend of mine at the time, and he has asked me for a critical reading of Paulo Freire, which was the title of the first book. And to my surprise, he said we may be able to publish it in Italy, not in Argentina, given the conditions. It was a week after the coup d'etat of 24th of March 1976, when I delivered the book to the publisher. So Barreiro convinced me that it would be better if I move out with my life. At the time, I have two children. There was the third coming. My daughter was going to be born in October. So I sent 200 letters asking for either jobs or fellowships. And I got two responses, one from Mexico saying that the Latin American Faculty of Social and Sciences were going to open another generation, in the first generation in Mexico City in 1976. I didn't know I was exiling forever, because you never know that. But I left assuming that I will come back. But while I was away, I discovered that really my life was in danger, and even I was announced as being dead in a confrontation in some newspaper, or at least my name was announced as being dead in a confrontation with the army. But of course I was not a member of any guerrilla warfare, but I was part of the intelligentsia that was opposing this kind of rampant authoritarianism.
As part of the Latin American diaspora, Carlos Torres became involved in the theology of liberation.
Theology of liberation is well defined by a statement made by the Jesuit Society in 1976. and it was a preferential option for the poor.
I would kind of think that as Christians who are concerned about a biblical vision of God and of God's mission in the world, we should at least listen to liberation theology, because it seems to me that for all its faults, it picks up on some important biblical themes. In particular, this idea that God acts within history in order to liberate the oppressed, and that Christians have a duty to actually be concerned about breaking the yokes of the oppressed and the downtrodden.
Was an attempt to understand that religion is not the opium of the people, but essentially is an alternative for people to become liberated. Religion, like in other places of the world, cannot be confined only to the work of the Catholic Church in Latin America, although it has been the dominant force, historically speaking, for the last 500 years. It influenced public policy, particularly in the areas that they care most about, such as abortion.
When we preach about abortion, we're not simply reminding the people in the pews that it's wrong. We're empowering and equipping them to go out and tell the rest of the world.
But having said this, the overall impression that one has by looking at the history of Latin America is that the Catholic Church has sided with the dominant powers, has sided with established elites. But there are great exceptions, and like the Archbishop Oscar Romero in El Salvador, assassinated by the death squads, or Bishop Enrique Angelelli from La Rioja in Argentina, killed during the dictatorship in very suspicious situations and conditions in an accident never clarified enough, or the Bishop of Olinda and Recife, Elder Cámara, who has been one of the leaders of theology liberation, and he is credited with have created the word conscientization. So as you see, like in other areas of the world, public policy can be influenced both from progressive or conservative forces. Unfortunately, historically, the Catholic Church has been on the side of the conservative forces.
An important influence on Dr. Torres' life and work is the educational philosopher Paulo Freire. Initially, Torres was reticent about Freire's ideas.
I could not accept the arguments of Freire, whom I considered at the time populist. Now, Pedagogy of the Press really changed my mind about Freire.
We teach them how to read texts, but we never teach them how to read contexts.
And Pedagogy of the Press is that systematic criticism to banking education. Is that attempt to challenge the establishment and the way people have been controlled. Once I met him, it transformed my life, because Freire himself was a very unique individual. He was a very committed individual, a very honest man, a man of his word, a man that believed in what he was doing. He was really giving us the exact clues of how to understand the miseries, but also the possibilities of social transformation.
For Paulo Freire, the work of teaching is a constant reevaluation of theory in the light of practice, an evolution that never stops, that never regards itself as complete.
In many respects, Freire was, for me, one of the greatest teachers I ever had. I will say, even in the Spanish term, un maestro.
Carlos Torres' Freirean experience brought him to comparative education. The combination of his sociological and adult education work provided the foundation for his reputation as a renowned comparativist.
I was one of the founders, with Paulo Freire and other colleagues, Moacir Gadotti, of the first Paulo Freire Institute in 1991 in Sao Paulo. And then we continue working with other colleagues across the globe. And now we have about 10 different, completely independent Paulo Freire Institutes. And Freire, at some point in his career, spoke about conscientization. And he said, we don't only educate to illustrate, to illuminate an encyclopedic device, but we illustrate to change reality. In other terms, if there is a definition that qualifies Freire very well, is we do teaching and research to change the world. As a sociologist, I was trained in sociology, I had also a very important interest in social theory. In the US, I began to study comparative international education, was part of my PhD, and I found that that was exactly the kind of topic, the kind of field in which I felt very much at home, and I began to develop work in the political sociology and particularly on Latin American education. That allowed me to combine empirical work with theoretical work, and at the same time always bringing the important element of politics into the conversation.
Na verdade, você tem uma maioria de pessoas que não tem as mesmas oportunidades. A maioria das pessoas não pode pagar uma escola particular. Acho que você tem que dar oportunidade para todas essas pessoas menos privilegiadas de ter o mesmo futuro que qualquer outra pessoa.
I do work in Europe, in Latin America and in Asia mostly. I have done some work in Africa as well. And it's all around the same issues. How comparative education can help to create a model of empowerment for those who are forgotten.
You grow up in America and you're told from day one, this is the land of opportunity, that everybody has an equal chance to make it in this country. And then you look at places like Harlem and you say that is absolutely a lie. If you grow up in a community where your schools are inferior, where the sounds of gunshots are a common thing, where you spend your time and energy not thinking about algebra or geometry, but about how not to get beat up, or not to get shot, or not to get raped. When you grow up like that, you don't have the same opportunity as other children.
The people who come from the lower levels of society, they're being priced out of the public universities. So we say that everyone should have a right to go to higher education. Everyone should have a right to better themselves, to get a better job.
Then I focus on values. I was very interested in seeing how values can be articulated in education, and then citizenship, democracy, multiculturalism emerge naturally as part of this process.